Please don't ignore me. Emily Parker's tiny voice cut through the hum of the high-end store like a sudden gust of wind against glass walls, silencing the chatter of shoppers for just a heartbeat. The chandeliers overhead glittered like frozen waterfalls, casting refracted light across polished mahogany counters and sparkling glass displays, a world built on wealth and precision, every corner gleaming under the cold, white light. Emily, no taller than 3 feet and clad in a faded blue dress with frayed cuffs, huddled behind a tall rack of imported linens, clutching her mother's worn scarf as if it were armor. She was supposed to be invisible, a shadow in this pristine empire of retail, but the urgency in her chest refused to let her remain silent. Every step taken by Richard Caldwell, the billionaire owner, echoed ominously across the marble floor, his expensive leather shoes clicking in a rhythm that made the air feel heavier. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the store but never lingered on the child tucked into a corner, a human detail lost in the perfection of wealth. Around her, the scent of polished wood mingled with the rich aroma of imported candles, and the faint notes of a classical piano track flowed from hidden speakers, filling the space with elegance, oblivious to the small drama unfolding unnoticed. Emily's heart raced. She had seen the misplaced price tag, the labeling error that could mislead hundreds of customers and cost the store thousands of dollars. Her little hands trembled as she debated whether to speak, her mother's words echoing in her mind. Be invisible, Emily, but see everything. The irony was sharp. She had seen the mistake, but in this world, seeing was rarely enough. The store's polished floors reflected the high ceilings and the dazzling light above, making her small frame seem even smaller, a lone figure in a cathedral of commerce. Customers moved past, their designer handbags swinging, their heels tapping with purposeful elegance, yet not one of them noticed her or the critical error she had spotted. Emily took a deep breath. Feeling the knot in her stomach tighten, she had to make a choice. Staying silent could mean disaster. Speaking up might risk embarrassment. She looked up briefly at the towering shelves, the meticulously organized merchandise, and the stark contrast between her worn dress and the glittering surroundings hit her like a wave. Then, as Richard passed within 10 feet of her hiding spot, engrossed in his tablet and the numbers of sales reports, she decided. Her voice, small but steady, rose above the ambient hum. Sir, that's wrong. The words floated across the aisle, barely audible to the ordinary ear, but to Richard, they struck like a bell, an unexpected disruption in his controlled, perfect environment. He paused, eyebrows knitting together, a flicker of recognition crossing his face as he finally registered the tiny figure behind the linens. For a moment, the store seemed to hold its breath, the sparkling lights shimmering as if waiting for the next move, the polished floors silent beneath the collective anticipation of unseen shoppers. Emily's eyes met his, wide and earnest, the gravity of what she had just revealed slowly sinking in, the first spark of shock igniting in the man who had overlooked her existence. And in that instant, the stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge perceptions, question assumptions, and leave everyone in the store hanging on the brink of revelation, wondering how the smallest voice could change everything. Emily Parker pressed herself tighter against the tall rack of linens, her small shoulders trembling as she clutched the scarf, feeling the weight of the quiet store pressing around her like a thick fog. The polished marble floors reflected the sparkling chandeliers above, each prism of light throwing tiny rainbows across the glass displays of perfume bottles and designer handbags, a world so pristine and precise it seemed untouched by the chaos of human error. She took a slow, steadying breath, her gaze scanning the labels and price tags she had memorized during her brief moment of observation, noting the exact detail that had gone wrong. The distant murmur of shoppers continued, punctuated by the faint click of high heels and the metallic chime of the automatic doors, but for Emily, time had slowed. The environment contracting to the space between herself and the critical error. Richard Caldwell, still bent over his tablet, did not yet notice her, yet a subtle shift in his posture suggested a change in the air, a hint that something small but significant had occurred. Emily's mind raced, each thought deliberate. She was aware that a single wrong word could cause confusion or embarrassment, but the responsibility pressed down on her young shoulders like a tangible weight. She remembered her mother's advice. Be invisible, Emily, but see everything, and understood that seeing alone was no longer enough. The faint scent of polished wood and imported candles filled her nostrils, grounding her in the moment, while the soft piano notes from the hidden speakers seemed to echo the rhythm of her own heartbeat. Emily's fingers tightened around the scarf. Then slowly, courage building from a well of quiet determination, she stepped forward, her small frame emerging into the aisle with the careful precision of someone navigating a minefield. Her voice, though tentative, carried the weight of truth and clarity as she spoke again. Sir, the label is wrong. The price does not match the actual product. The store seemed to pause, each crystal of the chandeliers refracting light, as if acknowledging the presence of the child and the importance of her words. Richard looked up this time, eyes lifting from the glowing screen, and for the first time, he truly saw her, the small girl with wide blue eyes and pale blonde hair that had fallen into soft waves around her face, the determination in her expression undeniable. The subtle hum of air conditioning and distant conversations faded into background noise as every eye in the vicinity, whether they admitted it or not, registered the child standing before the billionaire, pointing out a flaw in the empire he managed. Richard's expression shifted, a slow dawning of recognition and surprise spreading across his face as he processed the fact that the smallest figure in the store had identified the most important error of the day. Emily's heart pounded, and yet she remained still, her words clear and deliberate, the confidence in her tone belying her age. Around them, the store continued its rhythm of luxury and precision, but for that moment, the world contracted to the space between the girl and the man, between the unnoticed and the impossible, the invisible and the undeniable, leaving a tension that hovered like sunlight caught in crystal, promising that what would happen next could not be ignored. Richard Caldwell blinked, momentarily caught off guard by the clarity of Emily Parker's observation, the tablet in his hands suddenly feeling heavier than the weight of the store itself. He straightened slowly, the light from the chandeliers catching in his eyes, reflecting a mix of surprise and the dawning realization that this small figure had identified an error he had completely overlooked. The polished marble floors seemed to stretch endlessly beneath them, the soft hum of the air conditioning now underscored by a quiet tension that filled the store like a tangible presence. Emily shifted slightly, her small fingers still clutching the scarf, the determination in her posture unwavering despite the nervous flutter in her chest. Around them, the luxury merchandise remained immaculate, the crystal perfume bottles, hand-stitched leather handbags, and carefully folded designer linens standing in silent contrast to the unfolding drama between the child and the billionaire. Richard lowered the tablet, his gaze finally fully meeting hers, noticing for the first time the way her pale blonde hair framed her earnest blue eyes, the subtle quiver of her lips, the quiet bravery of a girl 10 years old standing her ground in a world built for the wealthy. The store seemed to pause, every soft footstep, every quiet breath, as though the very walls were holding their anticipation, waiting to see what would happen next. Emily took another deep breath, her small voice carrying just enough authority to pierce the background murmur. The price tag on the display does not match the barcode. It will charge customers incorrectly. Richard's eyes widened further, a flicker of admiration mingled with astonishment crossing his face. He took a cautious step closer, the leather of his shoes whispering across the marble floor, closing the distance between authority and innocence, power and observation. Emily felt a ripple of confidence wash over her, the fear that had been coiled inside her chest loosening slightly as she saw the impact of her words. The store's ambient sounds, the faint melody of classical piano, the soft clinking of glass, the gentle murmur of shoppers, seemed to fade into the background, replaced by the subtle gravity of the moment. Every detail, from the shimmer of the chandeliers to the polished edges of the counters, seemed to highlight the small yet critical action of the child before him. Richard's gaze lingered, no longer dismissive, as he processed the implication of her discovery, the oversight that could have cost the store dearly now corrected by this quiet observer. He allowed himself a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of Emily's courage and sharp attention, a rare recognition in a world dominated by hierarchy and wealth. The child's posture remained poised, shoulders square, chin lifted slightly, as if understanding that the bridge between insignificance and influence had been quietly crossed in that fleeting interaction. Outside the immediate exchange, shoppers continued their routines, unaware of the subtle yet profound shift that had just occurred, the invisible child suddenly becoming the center of attention without a single gesture of grandeur. Richard exhaled softly, the tension easing from his frame, a thoughtful smile brushing the corner of his lips, as the knowledge settled that in a world measured by wealth and stature, insight, courage, and careful observation could come from the smallest and most unexpected of sources, leaving the air charged with the promise of recognition, change, and the quiet unfolding of justice that would linger long after the moment had passed. Emily Parker felt a quiet shift in the energy of the store as Richard Caldwell took a deliberate step closer, his tailored suit moving with a precision that spoke of decades of power and control. Yet in this moment, he seemed less imposing, almost human, a man confronted by insight he had not expected from someone so small. The light from the chandeliers caught in the polished marble floor, scattering across the shelves of designer goods in prismatic patterns, reflecting the astonishment in Richard's eyes as he considered the implications of Emily's observation. The soft classical music playing from hidden speakers seemed to swell, carrying the tension through the air as Emily straightened her back, the scarf still clutched tightly, the faint scent of linen and polish surrounding her, marking the small boundary of her space against the opulence around her. Shoppers moved about, unaware of the subtle drama unfolding in the corner, their footsteps muted against the smooth floors, the low murmur of conversation blending into the background like distant wind through leaves. Emily's gaze remained steady, her wide blue eyes meeting Richard's as he slowly absorbed the significance of her words, the courage behind them, and the attention to detail that revealed the critical error in the display. The store's perfect order seemed to pause, the crystal chandeliers and gleaming counters framing the interaction like a living tableau, emphasizing the contrast between wealth and youth, authority and observation, power and quiet intelligence. Richard exhaled softly, a smile beginning to form at the edges of his lips, an acknowledgement of the unexpected wisdom presented by someone he had initially overlooked, a recognition that in a world driven by appearances and status, careful observation and courage could come from the smallest of voices. Emily felt the tension ease slightly in her chest, a subtle warmth of validation replacing the nervous flutter that had gripped her moments before, knowing that her action had not only corrected an error, but had drawn genuine attention and respect from the man who had seemed untouchable. The light in the store shimmered, bouncing off every surface, the reflections amplifying the sense of a moment suspended in time, every detail sharp and significant, from the delicate folds of the fabrics to the faint sparkle in the crystal perfume bottles, all silent witnesses to a young girl's quiet bravery. Richard's posture softened as he leaned slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement that was both subtle and profound, demonstrating that insight and courage could command attention without force or grandeur. Emily adjusted her scarf, the worn fabric now a talisman of her accomplishment. As the room seemed to hold its breath, the ambient sounds of shoppers, soft music, and the gentle hum of air conditioning fading into a background canvas that highlighted the importance of this small but pivotal moment. The interplay of light, color, and sound framed Emily's quiet triumph, the juxtaposition of the store's grandeur and the child's courage creating a cinematic tension that made every heartbeat and breath feel heightened, as if the very air were charged with possibility. In this suspended instant, Richard Caldwell recognized that authority and age could be challenged not by confrontation, but by careful observation, clarity, and quiet determination, a lesson embodied perfectly by Emily Parker, who, despite her size and youth, had commanded the room's attention through nothing more than presence, accuracy, and the courage to speak. Richard Caldwell's eyes softened as he took in Emily Parker's small, determined frame, the way her hands clutched the worn scarf, the faint creases of worry around her blue eyes, and the slight tilt of her head that spoke volumes of observation and courage. The store, with its polished marble floors and sparkling chandeliers, seemed to hold its breath, the soft classical music from hidden speakers wrapping around the aisles and displays, creating a moment suspended between opulence and innocence. Emily's gaze did not waver. She watched Richard, waiting for acknowledgement, aware that she had shifted the balance of attention simply by speaking truth to a detail others had missed. Around them, the meticulous displays of designer handbags, crystal perfume bottles, and folded linens reflected the light in countless tiny patterns, each one glimmering as if highlighting the quiet bravery of the child in contrast to the wealth and authority surrounding her. Richard stepped slightly closer, the faint tap of his polished leather shoes against the marble marking a rhythm that contrasted with the rapid beating of Emily's heart, and he lowered his tablet, fully, allowing his full attention to focus on the small figure before him. The tension in the air was palpable, not from confrontation, but from the sudden, undeniable presence of insight and courage in a place accustomed to appearances and perfection. Emily took another steadying breath, her voice barely above the soft hum of the store, recounting the specific discrepancy in the display, the error that could have caused confusion and loss. Richard's eyebrows rose in surprise, a mixture of admiration and astonishment spreading across his face as he processed the clarity and precision in her words. The light from the chandeliers caught the subtle shimmer of her hair, the gentle folds of her faded dress, and even the faint blush of her cheeks, painting a picture of youthful determination in a tableau of luxury. He exhaled softly, a smile beginning to form as he considered the rare quality of attention and bravery displayed by someone so young, a reminder that wisdom and courage are not bound by size or age. The shoppers around continued their movements, their footsteps and low conversations fading into a gentle background, leaving the moment entirely focused on the exchange between Richard and Emily, the silent acknowledgement of a lesson being learned by the wealthy man from the quiet, observant child. Emily straightened slightly, sensing the subtle shift in Richard's demeanor, a recognition that her observation mattered, that she had altered not only the immediate situation, but also the perception of her own presence in a space where children were meant to be invisible. The store's atmosphere seemed to resonate with a newfound gravity, the reflections in the glass and crystal accentuating the contrast between authority and innocence, between wealth and quiet insight, every element highlighting the power of careful observation, the courage to speak, and the respect that can arise when the small and overlooked voice is finally heard. Richard's softened expression and subtle nod communicated understanding and appreciation, an unspoken acknowledgement that in this carefully curated world of luxury, a child's clarity and attention to detail could create ripples of recognition and respect that even the most powerful could not ignore. Emily Parker's small frame remained steady, her breathing measured, as Richard Caldwell slowly extended a hand, not in reprimand, but in an unspoken invitation to bridge the gap between authority and observation. The store's vast aisles reflected the chandelier light in shimmering patterns across the marble floor, highlighting the contrast between the child's simple blue dress and the opulent displays surrounding them, from crystal perfume bottles to the meticulously arranged designer handbags. Every detail of the room seemed to pause in recognition, the ambient classical music taking on a soft resonance that mirrored the unfolding connection between the billionaire and the young observer. Richard's eyes, sharp and analytical moments before, now held a trace of admiration as he processed the clarity and courage Emily had displayed, recognizing that the oversight she pointed out could have had consequences if left uncorrected. Emily's heart lifted slightly, sensing that her voice had made a tangible difference, the quiet acknowledgement from a man so powerful instilling a sense of accomplishment and the realization that even in a world of wealth and hierarchy, insight and integrity could command respect. She took a small step forward, the soft tap of her shoes on the marble echoing faintly, blending with the subtle murmur of shoppers who remained largely unaware of the pivotal moment unfolding in their midst. Richard glanced around, noting the perfection of the displays, the gleam of the counters, the sparkling clarity of the crystal above. Yet all these symbols of wealth were now secondary to the unexpected intelligence standing before him. He allowed a small, approving nod, his expression softening further as he considered the importance of attentiveness, honesty, and courage regardless of size or age. Emily straightened her shoulders, a faint smile breaking across her face as she realized that her observation had altered the dynamics of the room, turning a moment of potential error into an affirmation of her own worth and capabilities. The light shifted subtly through the crystal chandeliers, scattering into soft rainbows that danced across the polished floors, reflecting off the gold-accented displays and hinting at the transformative effect of recognition and respect in the most unlikely of places. Richard's stance relaxed, his tablet forgotten at his side, as he absorbed the lesson quietly delivered by the child, the silent demonstration that clarity, courage, and diligence are qualities that demand notice, even in a room filled with wealth and authority. Emily's gaze held his for a brief moment, unflinching, the mixture of nerves and pride in her expression communicating volumes without a single additional word. Around them, the store resumed its normal rhythm, but the atmosphere remained subtly charged, a testament to the small, yet significant shift that had occurred between the observer and the observed, the quiet power of insight prevailing in a space where it was least expected, leaving the promise of further recognition and unfolding consequences that would ripple beyond the polished aisles and crystal chandeliers. Emily Parker took a cautious step back, her small frame still framed by the towering racks of linens. Yet her presence felt larger than her size as Richard Caldwell's gaze held steady on her, a mixture of respect and curiosity now softening the edge of his authoritative demeanor. The marble floors beneath them reflected the dazzling chandeliers above, the light scattering into thousands of tiny prisms that danced across the polished surfaces of perfume bottles, glass displays, and meticulously arranged designer handbags, highlighting the contrast between the luxurious environment and the child standing quietly at its center. Every subtle sound, from the distant hum of the air conditioning to the faint murmur of shoppers, seemed to fade into a background that emphasized the intensity of the moment, as though the store itself had taken a breath, waiting for what would unfold next. Emily's blue eyes, wide with determination, flicked to the misaligned display and then back to Richard, silently communicating the importance of her observation, the critical detail that could have caused confusion or financial discrepancies if left unchecked. Richard, for the first time, allowed himself to fully consider the value of attentiveness, the power of observation, and the unexpected insight offered by someone so small, his hands loosening slightly from the tablet as he absorbed the significance of the child's input. The air carried a delicate mixture of the scent of polished wood, fresh linens, and subtle notes of imported candles, grounding Emily in the space around her, while underscoring the opulence and precision of the environment in which her courage had emerged. She straightened her back, drawing a subtle but noticeable line of confidence through her posture, the faint blush on her cheeks illuminated by the soft refracted light of the chandeliers above, a visual testament to the courage and integrity she had summoned in a moment that had shifted the dynamic of attention and authority. Richard's expression softened further, a subtle nod acknowledging the clarity and honesty of her observation, an unspoken recognition that intelligence and courage could come from the most unexpected sources, challenging assumptions and reshaping the hierarchy of attention in the room. Around them, the store resumed its usual rhythm, the polished floors reflecting the movements of oblivious shoppers. Yet the energy between Emily and Richard held a quiet gravity, a tension interwoven with mutual recognition and newfound respect. Every detail, from the shimmer of crystal displays to the gentle folds of the designer linens, seemed to accentuate the delicate balance between wealth and insight, authority and observation, showing how a single voice, steady and precise, could command acknowledgement and reshape perceptions without the need for grandeur or force. Emily felt a calm certainty settle over her, the flutter of nerves replaced by the quiet satisfaction of having been seen, her courage validated in a space defined by wealth and meticulous order, while Richard, now thoughtful and attentive, began to perceive that the smallest contributions could carry the weight of significant impact, creating a subtle yet profound shift in the dynamics of the store and the moment that would ripple quietly through the day. Emily Parker hesitated for only a moment, her small hands gripping the scarf a little tighter as she surveyed the carefully curated aisles around her, the soft glow from the chandeliers casting delicate reflections on the polished marble floor, highlighting the contrast between her modest attire and the surrounding luxury. The subtle fragrance of imported candles and polished wood enveloped her, mingling with the distant sound of the classical piano that seemed to underscore the gravity of the moment, as if the store itself had slowed to witness the quiet courage of a child standing firmly in the midst of a world defined by wealth and perfection. Richard Caldwell stepped forward, his eyes narrowing slightly as he measured the precision and clarity of her observation, the corners of his mouth lifting into a tentative, approving smile that spoke of respect earned rather than demanded. Emily felt a subtle shift within herself, a growing confidence in the impact of her voice and the recognition of her attention to detail, her gaze steady as she watched him process the significance of the misaligned display. The store, still bustling with shoppers unaware of the silent exchange unfolding in the corner, seemed to fade into a soft background, the ambient sounds becoming a gentle backdrop to the delicate yet powerful interaction between authority and insight. Light from the chandeliers refracted through crystal, casting tiny rainbows across the aisles and shimmering on the glass displays of perfumes and handbags, each sparkle subtly emphasizing the transformative moment that had quietly taken place, a testament to the influence of attentiveness and courage in a space built on appearances and precision. Emily's posture remained poised, her chin lifted slightly, the faint blush on her cheeks illuminated by the ambient light, a visual reflection of the pride and satisfaction she felt in having been heard and recognized. Richard, adjusting the cuff of his tailored suit, allowed his expression to soften further, a silent acknowledgement of the child's role in averting a potential error and the clarity she had brought to the situation, the subtle nod of his head a mark of understanding that transcended words. Every detail of the store, the polished counters, the meticulously arranged merchandise, the gleaming floors, seemed to serve as a stage for this moment, framing the quiet triumph of a child whose courage and observation had commanded attention in a world not accustomed to noticing the smallest voices. Emily's eyes met his with a mixture of pride and anticipation, sensing that the acknowledgement she received would ripple beyond this single interaction, influencing the way she perceived her own capabilities and the impact of careful, honest observation. The soft murmur of shoppers, the gentle hum of the air conditioning, and the faint notes of music blended into an unobtrusive symphony around them, leaving the focus squarely on the connection formed in that instant, the store's opulent environment providing a striking contrast to the simple yet profound demonstration of insight, courage, and the quiet assertion of presence that had quietly shifted the dynamics of attention and respect in a single, unforgettable moment. Emily Parker took a decisive breath, her small voice carrying across the aisle with the quiet confidence of someone who had prepared for this moment, the words precise as she pointed out the exact discrepancy in the display, detailing how the misaligned pricing could mislead customers and affect the store's operations. The polished marble beneath her reflected the glittering chandeliers above, their prisms scattering light across the crystal perfume bottles, hand-stitched leather handbags, and carefully folded linens, each sparkle accentuating the gravity of her observation in a space defined by wealth and order. Richard Caldwell, the billionaire owner, paused mid-step, his eyes locking onto the child with a mixture of astonishment and respect, recognizing that the insight she offered was not only accurate, but also delivered with courage and clarity, a rare combination in someone so young. The ambient classical music, the distant hum of air conditioning, and the soft murmur of shoppers faded into the background, allowing the focus to remain entirely on the exchange, the tension of anticipation weaving through the air like a tangible presence. Emily's wide blue eyes met Richard's, steady and unwavering, conveying the seriousness of her observation and the integrity behind her words, while the faint blush on her cheeks highlighted the effort it took to step forward and speak in a room designed to make her feel invisible. Richard's hands relaxed at his sides, the tablet he had been holding now completely forgotten, as he processed the significance of the detail she had uncovered, the potential consequences averted by her attentiveness and willingness to act. Every crystal chandelier, every polished counter, Every reflection on the marble floor seemed to frame the moment like a stage, emphasizing the contrast between authority and observation, wealth and insight, highlighting how a single, clear voice could command attention and respect without grandeur or intimidation. Emily adjusted her scarf slightly, feeling a quiet pride swell in her chest as she realized the impact of her words, the acknowledgement from the most powerful figure in the room confirming her ability to influence events with honesty and precision. Richard leaned slightly forward, a subtle nod conveying both recognition and approval, a rare validation of the child's effort and perceptiveness. And in that moment, the dynamic between them shifted, authority tempered by appreciation and insight. The store resumed its soft rhythm around them, shoppers unaware of the pivotal interaction, while the interplay of light, reflection, and sound magnified the significance of the young observer's courage and skill, marking a turning point in how attention and respect were allocated within this environment. Emily felt a calm determination settle over her, the earlier flutter of nerves replaced by a quiet satisfaction and confidence, knowing that she had not only corrected a mistake, but had also commanded genuine acknowledgement from someone whose attention was rarely given freely. Richard's thoughtful expression and lingering gaze reflected an internal realization that insight, diligence, and courage could emerge from the most unexpected sources, leaving the room subtly charged with the promise of recognition, respect, and the transformative power of a single small voice making a significant difference in a world defined by wealth and precision. The store seemed to exhale as Richard Caldwell slowly took in the full measure of Emily Parker's presence, the small girl who had dared to speak up in a place dominated by wealth, perfection, and precision. The marble floors reflected the brilliant light of the chandeliers above, scattering into soft prisms that danced across the crystal perfume bottles and the hand-stitched leather handbags, each sparkle accentuating the delicate tension that had settled in the air. Emily's blue eyes held firm, steady and clear, her voice still echoing the details of the pricing error, the impact of her observation resonating in the silence that had fallen around them. Richard's expression shifted subtly, mixing with respect as he acknowledged that the smallest and most overlooked voice had uncovered a truth that he himself had missed, a realization that rippled quietly through the space, bending the rigid structure of authority just enough to make room for recognition. The soft notes of classical music continued in the background, the hum of the air conditioning and the muted chatter of shoppers fading as the weight of the moment concentrated between the two of them, the opulent store suddenly serving as the backdrop for a quietly profound encounter. Emily straightened further, the faint blush on her cheeks catching the light, her posture a visual testament to her courage and quiet determination, and she felt the gentle shift of acknowledgement from Richard as he leaned slightly forward, eyes focused, lips parting in a small smile that spoke volumes without words. The displays around them, the perfectly folded linens, the crystal bottles, the carefully arranged merchandise, seemed to shimmer in agreement, reflecting the significance of the moment in their polished surfaces, each detail magnifying the subtle drama of recognition unfolding. Richard allowed a slow, deliberate nod, a gesture that conveyed appreciation, understanding, and a respect for diligence and insight, demonstrating that even in a world built on appearances, careful observation and courage could command attention and alter perception. Emily's heart lifted, the tension easing into a sense of quiet triumph, knowing that her presence and clarity had made a tangible impact, bridging the gap between invisibility and significance in a space that often overlooked the smallest voices. The light scattered across the marble and glass, the gentle hum of activity blending with the soft classical music and the distant murmur of shoppers, all seemed to underscore the power of truth and integrity, highlighting how the quiet courage of a child could create ripples through a carefully curated world of wealth. Every detail, from the sparkle of crystal to the faint fragrance of polished wood, amplified the contrast between the opulence surrounding her and the simple bravery she had displayed, reinforcing the lesson that attentiveness, clarity, and courage are recognized and valued, even by those who wield the greatest authority. Emily felt a quiet satisfaction, a gentle warmth that spread from her chest, knowing she had not only corrected an error, but had also commanded respect, leaving Richard reflective, thoughtful, and subtly changed by the realization that wisdom, insight, and courage can emerge from the most unexpected places, altering the dynamics of power and acknowledgement in ways that shimmer long after the moment has passed. The moment lingered as Emily Parker and Richard Caldwell exchanged a quiet, understanding glance, the tension in the store easing into a sense of resolution that seemed almost tangible against the backdrop of marble floors and sparkling crystal chandeliers. Light refracted from the glass displays and mirrored surfaces, casting delicate patterns across the carefully arranged designer handbags, crystal perfume bottles, and folded linens, emphasizing the contrast between the luxurious environment and the understated courage of the small girl who had captured the attention of the billionaire. Emily's chest swelled with a quiet sense of pride, her shoulders relaxing as she recognized that her observation had not only averted potential confusion, but had earned the acknowledgement of someone whose presence usually commanded the undivided attention of everyone in the store. Richard, now fully focused on her, allowed a slow smile to form, a reflection of the appreciation and respect that had quietly blossomed between them, a subtle acknowledgement that wisdom and insight could emerge from the most unexpected places. Around them, the store resumed its rhythm, shoppers moving about, unaware of the small but profound shift that had occurred in the corner where authority had been tempered by recognition and insight. The faint hum of air conditioning, the distant rustle of shopping bags, and the soft notes of classical piano continued to create an ambient soundscape that underscored the elegance and order of the store, yet within it, the subtle gravity of the interaction lent a sense of significance that made every detail, from the polished counters to the reflections on the marble floor, resonate with quiet importance. Emily adjusted her scarf, her blue eyes shining with a mixture of relief and satisfaction, aware that her courage and attentiveness had created a moment of lasting impression, a recognition that would not soon fade. Richard, still attentive, took a slow step back, his posture relaxed yet respectful, a subtle signal that the balance between authority and humility had been redefined, however briefly, by the clarity and precision of a child's insight. Light continued to scatter through the chandeliers, refracting across crystal and glass in a silent applause for the small but significant achievement, highlighting how a simple act of observation and honesty could command attention, foster respect, and shift perception even in a space defined by wealth and meticulous order. Emily felt the moment settle within her, a quiet warmth and confidence that would linger far beyond the immediate interaction, the realization that careful attention, courage, and integrity were noticed and valued by those who understood their significance. The store's luxury, the gleam of the floors, the sparkle of the crystal, and the ambient elegance all combined to frame the moment as a subtle triumph of insight over oversight, of quiet courage over authority unchecked, leaving both Emily and Richard poised on the brink of a shared understanding that would quietly influence the way each viewed the dynamics of attention, respect, and the unspoken power of the smallest voice. As the light from the chandeliers shifted with the passing hour, casting warm golden hues across the polished marble floors and sparkling displays, Emily Parker felt a quiet satisfaction settle in her chest, the subtle acknowledgement from Richard Caldwell resonating within her like the gentle hum of a long-forgotten melody. The store, with its meticulously folded linens, crystal perfume bottles, and gleaming handbags, remained pristine, yet every surface seemed to reflect the significance of the moment, the quiet triumph of observation, courage, and honesty in a space dominated by wealth and authority. Emily's gaze softened as she looked around, recognizing that her careful attention, clarity, and the courage to speak had not only corrected a potential error, but had also earned respect from someone whose approval was rarely granted lightly. Richard, standing nearby with his hands relaxed at his sides, allowed himself a contemplative smile, his eyes following the subtle movements of the young girl, noticing the way her pale blonde hair fell gently around her blue eyes, how her posture conveyed both humility and determination, a rare and compelling combination that transcended age and stature. The gentle classical music that had been playing from hidden speakers wove through the aisles, blending with the distant murmur of shoppers and the soft echo of footsteps on the marble, creating a symphony that underscored the quiet yet profound impact of Emily's actions. Every detail of the store, the shimmer of crystal, the polished wood surfaces, the subtle scent of imported candles, seemed to frame her accomplishment, emphasizing that insight, attentiveness, and courage could be recognized and valued even in the most unlikely places. Emily adjusted her scarf, the worn fabric now a symbol of both resilience and quiet authority, and she felt the warmth of pride and validation that came from having been truly seen, her voice heard, and her contribution acknowledged. Richard's posture remained relaxed yet attentive, a subtle acknowledgement that authority could coexist with humility, and that recognition of the smallest but most precise observations was a lesson not easily forgotten. The light continued to scatter across the marble and crystal, reflecting the transformative moment in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, emphasizing the power of a single, quiet voice to shift dynamics, earn respect, and create change in an environment built on perfection and wealth. Emily's heart felt light, yet steady, a sense of confidence and calm coursing through her as she understood that her courage and honesty had made a tangible difference, not just in the immediate correction of the display, but in the recognition she had garnered and the subtle shift in perception that now existed between her and Richard. The store's rhythm resumed around them, shoppers moving past, unaware of the subtle yet profound lesson that had taken place, while the soft light and ambient sounds carried a sense of resolution and hope, marking the quiet culmination of a moment that would leave a lasting impression on both the child who spoke and the billionaire who listened, a testament to the enduring value of clarity, integrity, and the courage to be heard in the most unexpected of circumstances. The store's atmosphere seemed to settle into a gentle rhythm as Emily Parker took a slow, measured breath, the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant clink of shopping bags fading into a backdrop that highlighted the quiet triumph she had achieved. The light from the chandeliers refracted across the marble floors and crystal displays, scattering into patterns that shimmered over the meticulously arranged designer handbags, crystal perfume bottles, and folded linens, emphasizing the contrast between the opulence around her and the understated courage she had displayed. Emily felt a sense of calm confidence, the recognition she had earned from Richard Caldwell, the billionaire owner, settling within her like a warm, steady current, a subtle acknowledgement of her attentiveness, precision, and bravery. Richard, standing nearby with a thoughtful expression, allowed himself to consider the impact of her actions, the clarity of her voice, and the insight she had brought to a situation that could have gone unnoticed, the small detail she had observed now shaping the perception of the room and the hierarchy within it. Every footstep, every whisper of movement, seemed to accentuate the gravity of the moment, as the ambient classical music wove a quiet symphony through the aisles, complementing the reflections on the polished counters and the sparkling surfaces of the glass displays. Emily adjusted her scarf, the worn fabric a reminder of both her modesty and her determination, feeling the quiet satisfaction that came from having been seen, having spoken with clarity, and having affected the environment around her in a meaningful way. Richard's gaze lingered, a subtle smile tracing the edge of his lips, signaling a shift in awareness, a realization that courage, observation, and honesty could emerge from the smallest voice, capable of altering perception and earning respect in ways that mere authority could not. The shoppers continued their routines, unaware of the profound lesson unfolding, while the store itself seemed to hold a faint reverence for the subtle transformation that had taken place, each reflection of light and crystal echoing the newfound respect between the child and the man who had witnessed her insight. Emily's blue eyes sparkled faintly as she observed the way Richard's posture had softened, the acknowledgement unspoken yet unmistakable, a testament to the quiet power of clarity and integrity. The interplay of light, marble, and crystal created an almost cinematic tableau, framing the girl and the billionaire in a moment suspended between observation and recognition, humility and authority, subtlety and influence. As she straightened, a gentle warmth of pride and validation spread through her, the knowledge that her attention to detail, her courage to speak, and her quiet strength had made a difference, and that respect could be commanded without volume, without force, simply through honesty and insight. The store's grandeur, the gleam of the floors, the sparkle of chandeliers, and the ambient music combined to accentuate the significance of the encounter, leaving a lasting impression of how a small voice, spoken with clarity and courage, can ripple through a world of wealth and precision, reshaping perception, fostering recognition, and leaving an enduring lesson in integrity and the quiet power of being seen.